At Stma, we are committed to students first. Every day, we work hard to practice these values while providing our taxpayers with a solid return on investment. Our continuing success as a district is a product of our students, their families, our staff, and our generous community, which is why we want you to be informed. Our ability to continue to provide exceptional educational opportunities and retain quality staff is partially a product of adequate funding. And the one area where Stma is falling further behind is the amount of student funding we receive from our state legislators. You see, when it comes to funding public schools in Minnesota, all children and taxpayers are not equal. Today, children in similar school districts throughout Minnesota receive vastly different sums of revenue based largely on where families choose to live. For example, the lowest funded school district in Minnesota receives approximately $9,300 annually, while the highest funded school district receives $19,000, more than twice as much. Minnesota's formula for funding public education remains grossly unfair to Stma kids and continues to punish families for where they choose to live. In fact, Stma currently ranks almost last among 327 school districts in the state. Yes, you heard that correctly. Stma is almost dead last. Our students receive close to the least amount of revenue in the state. In fact, some school districts very close and very similar to our own receive thousands more in state revenue each year. It is a policy that is hard to explain and to understand. To understand just how we got here, it is important to have a basic knowledge of how public schools are funded in Minnesota. First, it is important to know that close to 86% of the money Stma spends comes directly through the state's funding formula. Education spending is about 40% of the state's budget, but that money is not spread out evenly across Minnesota school districts. State legislators decide how much money will be spent. That money is allocated according to a complicated funding formula that gives vastly different amounts of money to each school district. First, a few basics. Every school district receives a basic amount of money for per pupil spending. For this year, that amount is $6,863 per pupil. The rest of the state money is distributed as categorical aid according to a complex formula. At Stma, for reasons that are no fault of the community or district, we do not qualify for much categorical aid. Categorical aid is somewhat arbitrary, and the exact reasons why some school districts qualify and other school districts do not is determined by our state legislators. In short, this means our school district receives thousands of dollars less than other school districts. Here is what each Stma student receives from the state, and here are examples of what other districts receive. If that was not enough, our local taxpayers actually pay more than taxpayers in other districts because raising school revenue through an operating levy is tied to the district's commercial property base. The Stma community is property poor, meaning there's little commercial and industrial development to expand the tax base, which causes the tax burden to fall heavily on residential homeowners. For an operating levy, Stma taxpayers pay significantly more than taxpayers just down the road who reside in a property-rich community with lots of commercial and industrial development. For example, for the same levy amount, here is what Stma taxpayers pay, and here are examples of what taxpayers in other districts pay. What does this all mean? In order for us to maintain our tradition of excellence, we need an equitable funding system that is not based on where families choose to live. Minnesota's inequitable way of funding public education is not fair to our students, our taxpayers, or our community. All students deserve support and equitable opportunities. If you want to help, write a letter, send an email, or call your elected officials. For legislator contact information, visit the Stma website.